going to try and find out whether or not my great-great-grandfather, Michael McInnis, served in the Mexican-American War. So I'm going to meet with Amy Greenberg at the Georgetown Neighborhood Library.
So nice to meet you, Chris.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find out some information on my great-great-grandfather, Michael McInnis. I understand you are an expert on the Mexican-American War.
Well, I was able to get his compiled military records from the National Archives, and I think you'll find these interesting.
So my great-great-grandfather served in the Mexican-American War.
He did.
That's amazing. Can you just give me a little synopsis on the Mexican-American War, just to refresh my memory from senior year of high school?
Absolutely. So the U.S.-Mexico War is about the boundary of the United States at the time.
Gotcha.
In 1846, the western border of the United States reached only to what we now call the Midwest, and Mexico claimed the area from West Texas to California. At the time, the U.S. was riding high on a belief known as manifest destiny, the idea that America was destined to stretch across the continent. In May of 1846, President Polk declared war on Mexico, and young men like Michael McInnis answered the call to invade, claim territory, and push the U.S. border west to the Pacific.
So here are Michael McInnis's muster rolls from the U.S.-Mexico War.
So this would explain how he got there, or?
Muster roll is a record of your service. McInnis was one of the 12-month volunteers. Most of the volunteers in this war signed up for a 12-month period.
Okay. Michael McInnis, so June 11th to August 31st, 1846. He's probably 21 years old. So he went in June 11th.
This is less than a month after Polk first calls for volunteers. So
this war has just begun.
The war has really just begun. I'm imagining Michael McInnis being one of the thousands of men who are extremely, extremely excited, and as soon as they hear this call for troops, they turn out.
They're out there, okay.
McInnis was under orders to march through New Mexico, capture New Mexico, and march all the way to California and capture California.
Oh, really?
This is 2 months in the summer, marching through Oklahoma and New Mexico. It was brutal. Everybody would have been sunburned. Everybody would have been parched.
Wow. Okay, January and February, now we're into 1847.
Right.
What is it, St. Louis? He's back in St. Louis. His remarks, absent on furlough since the last muster. So he went absent. So he signed up in June of 1846 for a year.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, after 7 months, he disappears and he's on furlough, he's back in St. Louis.
That's right. In fact, he's back in St. Louis just a few months after he musters into service.
He got there and then they sent him back?
Pretty much right away.
So what could that, I mean, I wonder why he was sent back or what he went back for.
Well, I think we may be able to determine that from looking online at Fold 3, which is historical military records.
Okay. Letters from the Adjutant General, 1822 to 1860. All right, so I'm gonna open that. Washington, December 21st, 1846. Discharge of Michael McInnis, okay. On the 7th of June, I left St. Louis. Oh, this is a letter from Michael.
Yeah.
If after leaving Fort Leavenworth and arriving at Santa Fe, I received intelligence of the sudden death of my father. He just got there and he finds out his dad died, leaving me a large and helpless family to protect and see after. He just gets there and he gets word that his dad has passed away.
And he's 21 years old.
Wow. It's a lot of responsibility. I immediately applied for a discharge. So that's what happened. So he got to Santa Fe. He signed up for a year. He was only there a couple months, and immediately he gets a letter that his father's passed away, who's the head of the whole family. So is that a dishonorable discharge, or is that?
No, it isn't a dishonorable discharge, because at the end of the letter that you were just reading, he was applying for a discharge, and he got one. He was honorably discharged.
He was honorably discharged.
Right.
The family obligation was more important to him, and it pulled him back to St. Louis.
You know, there's an amazing collection of Mexican War artifacts at the Smithsonian Museum. We should probably go check that out.
That would
while
be
you're
great.
here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seems like Michael was, the ultimate Eagle Scout or something. I mean, an amazing amount of character. He signed right up to fight in the Mexican-American War, and then when he found out his dad had died, he felt obligated to go back and take care of the family and then serve his city by burying all the dead during the cholera epidemic. I mean, he had a real sense of duty and obligation. Family obviously was such a priority for him, and it's always been a priority for me. I mean, I knew I always wanted to have a big family, and even with my career taking me everywhere I've been filming and that sort of thing, it's always just been, my family first and even above my career. I've been to the Smithsonian before, I've taken my kids there, so this will be kind of fun to have a real interest in seeing something that directly relates to my family history.
Here's the Mexican War.
Aha. Amy's arranged for us to meet with one of the curators at the Smithsonian, David Miller. David, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How's it going?
All right.
Wow, look at this. What do we have here?
Chris O'Donnell is at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History, where he's just uncovered an intriguing artifact in the museum's collection.
What do we have here?
We have a letter that came in with one of our items in the collections. I think you'd like to read it.
June 5th, 1905. My dear friend and comrade, I have thought over your request to place my old saber in your hands. These arms were given to men to be used either as cavalry or infantry, as occasion might require. Neither arms were handsome, yet the one I carried and accidentally retained, is valued as a souvenir of a war that won high honor on the United States. If you still think it's worthy of placing with other souvenirs of the Mexican War in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., I am not disposed to refuse your request. Very truly your friend and comrade, Michael McInnis. That's unbelievable. This was his saber.
That was his saber.
I can't believe that you've got his saber. Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
It is a model 1813 horseman's saber.
And this was in storage here
Yes,
at
it
the
was.
Smithsonian.
Mhm.
Who would have thought 107 years later, his great-great-grandson would come in here and be looking at this? He somehow ended up with it, he said. It's funny, I have a sword from when I did the Three Musketeers. I kept my sword. I somehow accidentally kept it.
Must run in the family.
It must run in the family. What's amazing is that he kept all these letters and these documents writing about the history that he experienced, and yet somehow nobody in the family had all this.
So I was doing some research on Michael McInnis, and I also found this.
Let's see what we got here. Holy cow. What year do we think this was, probably?
About
This was
80
nice.
there.
So probably when he wrote this letter.
Yeah.
There are little resemblances to my own father, William. That's got to be the same bloodline. There's something to it. Boy, his hair was white. Does that mean I'm going gray? St. Louis Post-Dispatch, May 14th, 1911. Michael McInnis is the only man living in St. Louis of 8,600 who marched away from here to the Mexican War 65 years ago. The sword he carried to the Mexican War is preserved as a relic in the Smithsonian Institution. McInnis comes of fighting stock. He is of the 9th generation of his family in this country. The 9th generation of his family in this country, and this is back in 1900. Oh my God, that's unbelievable.
Minnie's father was awarded the Distinguished Flying Medal after the Second World War air battle of Heligoland Bight. On the 18th of December, 1939, 24 Wellingtons from 3 different RAF squadrons left airfields in East Anglia on one of the first major bombing raids of the war. Ronnie Driver was just 18 years old when he and 128 other British airmen launched their attack on the German naval base at Wilhelmshaven across the North Sea. They flew in broad daylight, without a fighter escort, in the belief that the Wellington, with its electrically operated machine gun turrets, would always get through to its target, no matter what opposition it faced. It was a catastrophic misjudgment by the RAF. Minnie has come to Brooklands Museum in Surrey to meet historian Robin Holmes.
I
Robin.
Good morning, Minnie.
Good morning.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Very
you.
nice to meet you. Please.
Okay, great.
Robin and his team spent 8 years salvaging and partially restoring the only surviving aircraft to have taken part in the Battle of Heligoland Bight.
It's called a Wellington bomber.
The big one there?
Your father flew in an absolutely identical plane to that one. Biggest raid in history up to then. Very beginning of the war. He was in a very prominent position. He was right at the very front of it in the gun turret.
Wow.
The Wellingtons reached the German naval base unopposed and launched their attack.
This is a photograph that was taken on the raid as your father flew across the harbour. This aircraft here dropped 3 500-pound bombs on these German ships.
Okay.
And another plane, but we don't know which one it was, could have been your father's plane, also dropped bombs on those ships. And then that's when the Luftwaffe hit them like a ton of bricks.
Did they know what was coming at them?
Not really, no. The Germans were using their new Messerschmitts. That's the Bf 109D. Very fast.
Very fast.
350 miles an hour. That was the very latest fighter that the Germans had. The bombers were defending themselves with these. That's a 303 rifle bullet. And that's what your father was defending the aircraft with. What the Germans were attacking them with were these. That's a 20mm cannon shell. And the German fighters were equipped with those. So you can see the disparity there.
This was their ammunition, and this was our ammunition.
Yes. Actually, there was an account of this whole battle, and that was published at the time for sixpence.
Epics of the RAF.
Yes. There we go.
Another Wellington forced out of its formation was swooped on by a swarm of German fighters, which swept over it continuously, spraying it with machine gun fire. The bottom of the front gun turret had been blown away, and the turret set on fire. Later, I heard from the lips of the pilot himself the story of that nightmare journey home. My gunner was very prompt with the fire and beat it out with his gloved hands. That's Dad. Is
That's
that
your father, yes.
But for him, the aircraft would have been well alight in a few seconds. His quick action saved our lives.
And for his actions, he got the DFM, a medal, which he truly deserved.
I gotta read this next bit, because it's good.
Please, please.
When the bottom of the gun turret was blown away, the gunner found that his leg was dangling in the air over the water, but his huddled position kept him from falling through the hole into the sea. It's probably because he was so big as well. Will you show me where the...
Yes.
So, none of this was here.
No. This was all shot away.
So this is what they're saying, where his leg was dangling down?
All the perspex had been shot away from the turret. I think it would be rather nice if you were to see where your father actually sat in the plane.
Yeah.
Right. Can you manage?
Yep.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Now, if you go up and stand on the little platform.
So stand
up there. Okay.
Holy cow.
Can you look forward? Look forward into the gun turret. Can you get along?
Yeah. You've got to be kidding me.
No.
My dad was huge. I can't
And he
believe...
had all his flying gear on as well, because it was very, very cold.
I can't believe how tiny it is in there. How you're completely and utterly unprotected.
Nothing between
Nothing
you.
protecting you except...
Nothing between you apart some perspex. His very best friend was called Lily, aircraftsman Lily, and he was in the rear gun turret. And sadly, he did not survive the battle. Your dad actually lost his best friend on the Battle of Heligoland Bight.
This is the Battle of Meuse-Argonne. It was a colossal, one of the greatest battles of the entire war. Your grandfather's 26th Division arrived here on the 18th of October 1918.
Wow.
It was their job to take the German defences on the top of this ridge here. And they were formidable defences. The Germans knew that this attack was coming and they concentrated their best forces.
Yeah.
It was a devastating attack for them.
Wow.
Because they had machine gun fire coming from the hills over here, a machine gun fire coming from the hills over there. And this is converging and crossing these fields. So in order to reach the German trenches, you have to walk through a stream of bullets. So if we have a look at your grandfather's duties, do you know what he did?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, see, he died right before I was born, so...
He was a private first class and specifically trained to save life on the field. He'd follow the infantry into battle, and he would be the first man on the scene of an injury. With the shells and machine guns, you wouldn't be able to hear yourself scream.
Yeah.
He couldn't hear the men shouting for help. He would have to see that.
Yeah.
He is totally exposed, and his job was utterly, utterly critical, because he had to stop hemorrhage from bullet wounds or shrapnel wounds and splint people if they had badly shattered legs or arms. God. Before the stretcher bearers came, it was a position of huge responsibility. And the thing you have to know, Matthew, is that every single man in that company would have totally depended upon your grandfather to save their lives. And this is where certain things happened to your grandfather, which probably affected him for the rest of his life.
Matthew Broderick is searching back into his father's family history.
I don't know anything about that line of our family.
He's now in France, where his grandfather James Joseph Broderick served in World War I when he was only 22 years old.
It's amazing, I really knew almost nothing about him. But I found out that he was a medic, and he was the one who would rush right out in enemy fire and friendly fire. Extremely dangerous job. He was right in the middle of it. Learning what happened here, it's hard to imagine anyone escaping uninjured. It's amazing anyone survived.
The thing you have to know, Matthew, is that he wasn't coming here to kill anybody. He was here to preserve life.
Right.
To preserve the life of his own pals. And I've got something else to show you here, which I suspect you might not have seen before.
Oh. Purple Heart. Is that right?
Yep.
Wow. I mean, this is incredible. So this is he was wounded.
That's right. It's this document which tells us where he was wounded, and that's how we can place him here by the date of this document.
Because you know where his group was on 10/27/18.
That's right.
Broderick James J. wounded in action, private, medical department, awarded Purple Heart, wounded in action, October 27th, 1918. Boy, this is no small thing, you know. Well, bless his heart. I wonder how bad it was.
I mean, there's a rumour it may have been gas, but here it's more likely to be shell fire or bullet wound.
Amazing, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. I never would have known. Well, I found out, I guess, quite a bit about what his experience in World War I was like. Oh, he was this very brave man who never spoke about it. I didn't even know he had this Purple Heart. It's shocking to me, and I'm very proud of it.
John Christopher East, I learned today, was a patriot. I mean, that's the stuff that I love. I mean, that's the word patriot, revolutionary. That's my dream, is to have some connection to real American heroes.
I don't know who John Christopher East is. I don't even know his relationship to Bessie Mae East, or how far back he goes in my family tree. So I'm meeting with genealogist Josh Taylor at the Daughters of the American Revolution headquarters.
I learned recently of a family member named John Christopher East.
Okay.
And we have him in a Revolutionary War patriot's grave by virtue of documents I found online.
Okay.
So my question is, how am I related to John Christopher East? John Christopher East, I learned today, was a patriot. I mean, that's the stuff that I love. I mean, that's the word patriot, revolutionary. That's my dream, is to have some connection to real American heroes.
I don't know who John Christopher East is. I don't even know his relationship to Bessie Mae East or how far back he goes in my family tree. So I'm meeting with genealogist Josh Taylor at the Daughters of the American Revolution headquarters.
I learned recently of a family member named John Christopher East.
Okay.
And we have him in a Revolutionary War patriot's grave by virtue of documents I found online.
Okay.
So my question is, how am I related to John Christopher East? And what, if anything, did he do in the Revolution?
Well, you're in the right place. You are in the research library of the Daughters of American Revolution. And to be a member of the DIR, you have to be a documented descendant of a patriot.
Right.
So they have an online database that we're actually going to take a look at to see what records might be here.
Great. So if I type in John Christopher East here and it comes up, what exactly is that going to tell us?
It means that someone has submitted an application on behalf of John Christopher East.
To be confirmed as a revolutionary patriot.
The DIR recognizes those who serve military and non-military service. You had to support the revolutionary cause, though.
Right, right. John Christopher. Oh my. I'm just taking in service Pennsylvania rank private.
I am actually going to go have the DAR genealogists here pull the application that have to do with John Christopher East. And they're incredible because they contain family Bibles, letters, diary entries that you might not see anywhere else but here.
Good, excellent, all right. John Christopher East, born in 1754. We're jumping way back. If we're starting here, where are we gonna end up? Great. Great. How many greats are we dealing with?
You're back to 5.
How great is this?
So he's your 5 times great-grandfather.
Wow. That is unbelievable.
Prisoners sent to Charlestown by Colonel Richardson. There's a lot of prisoners.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, Captain Lindley. So he was a loyalist. Wow. 96, canebrake militia captain.
He was captured with men who stole gunpowder at the canebrake camp, so it's fairly definitive that he's a loyalist.
Lindley was against the revolution.
He stayed loyal to the crown.
All right. This was January 2nd, 1776. So that would make him 40 years old. And he was taken prisoner. Well, do you have anything to tell me what happened after this and how James Lindley ended up?
Well, that's a really good question. That's a really good question, and I don't have documents here to tell you about that.
So what should I do?
Well, I have a colleague named Rebecca Brannon, who is a specialist, an expert on South Carolina Loyalists, and I think what you need to do is go talk to her.
Mary Beth, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank
Nice
you so
talking
much.
to you,
Yeah,
Matthew. I'm
yeah.
always glad to help.
Helped me a lot. I can't wait to continue on. I'm so proud of this country and to be an American and what that means. I didn't really like it when I heard that James Lindley was a loyalist. Being on this side of history and knowing what happens, it just has a bad connotation. It wasn't a position that I respect. But at the same breath, I mean, there was no easy decision to make. I don't know what I would have done. Family is everything to me, and being imprisoned and not knowing if you're ever gonna see your children again. I mean, it must have been such a horrible, horrible time. I'm really curious to see what happens to James Lindley.
Actually, I'd love to show you a map of the area just to get a sense of like Joseph Maby's world here. Ooh. You're looking at the Hudson Valley in the 18th century.
And who's living here at this time?
It's a very ethnically diverse place, a lot of indigenous people living here, particularly Mohawk people and Iroquois people, Dutch and French, African descent. I mean, just about anyone who's in colonial America is concentrated here. And this becomes one of the most fought over places in the whole colonial era. Whoever controls this waterway controls North America. And in 1775, the people living here, they've just gotten word that fighting has broken out in Massachusetts. It's the era of the American Revolution, and everyone's starting to look at each other and going, you know, if that conflict comes to us, Mr. Offerman, where will you stand? You know, are you going to stand with the king? Are you going to stand with Congress?
What a terrifying atmosphere of paranoia and distrust.
It's a dangerous situation, and the consequences of the choice that you make at this point, we all know how civil wars often end.
So in 1775, my 6 times great grandpa, Joseph Mabie, born in 1729, I'd say he was 46 years old or so during the Revolution. Yeah. Do you know if Joseph Mabie got involved further once people had to sign up to fight?
I do have another document. See what you can make of this.
Wow. Following the Mabie line, do you know if Joseph Mabie got involved further once people had to sign up to fight?
I do have another document.
Now it occurs to me, a la Christmas morning, to look over there and see what is still under the tree.
See what you can make of this.
It looks like a receipt. Joseph Mabie, private, appears as shown below on a receipt roll. Revolutionary War, not a big deal. Witness our hands, September 27th, 1784. Conjahari District, Montgomery County. Joseph, his mark, Mabie, private. M-A-Y-B-Y though, but I'm gonna guess that's who we're looking for.
You found him.
To be clear, if it says his mark, it means he can't write.
Correct. Yeah.
Fascinating. My head is spinning a little bit because this is wild. Like, I have to say, it's a great relief because God love you, Grandpa Joe. But I was terrified that he was going to be some sort of, he was Benedict Arnold's right hand. I'm glad to know that Joseph Mabie stood up and said, we're going to get behind this Continental Congress down in Philadelphia. We like the cut of their jib. We like these intrepid new ideas, which took a lot of guts. Presumably, Great-Grandpa Joe had a piece of land. There was something that made him value his place in this community.
Where we are now is the German Military Records Office, which has all the records of German soldiers and airmen through both World Wars. I've looked at some of the records here in Berlin, and I can confirm to you that he wasn't a member of the SS, not a Nazi Party member, and not a member of the SA.
Well, that's good to know.
That is not necessarily a clean bill of health.
Right.
You know, there's many shades of grey in Nazi Germany. If you bear in mind that Nazi Party membership was only 10% of the population, and yet there was within the rest of the population, there's an awful lot that people that could be complicit and could have done some awful things as well.
Okay.
One way that we can perhaps get an insight into his sympathies is to look at his military document. This is your grandfather's Salzbuch, which is his army paybook. This gives you a lot of details about him and about his army career. So this is a very good resource for us answering some of those questions.
Okay.
So this date here is important. His war starts on the 22nd of September 1939, which is quite early. This is only three weeks after the outbreak of war.
Does the date that he entered the war have any leaning towards how enthusiastic he was? I mean, do we know if he wanted to go into the war at that time?
Not particularly. You'd imagine so, that it might suggest enthusiasm, but he's conscripted. This is the draft, so he really had no choice about this.
Wow, so he had to leave my grandmother with a newborn. My mom was just 4 months old then.
This next page here actually gives you details of his promotions in his military career.
That's the entire record?
That is.
Okay.
He goes from private, and then it's 2 subsequent promotions to private first class, and then to corporal.
So that's 3.
3. This is not the sort of career of a high-flying soldier.
Okay, but that could mean one of 2 things, right? That he wasn't A, enthusiastic, or B, he could just not be very talented as a soldier.
That could also be the case.
Okay.
Also, the regiment, I think, is significant. He begins in the 196th Artillery Regiment. The 196th was a unit that would be considered about 4th or 5th tier.
Oh.
So they'd generally be kept in the rear. And then if you were particularly good at what you were doing, you could find promotion to a frontline, elite regiment.
Okay.
In the case of your grandfather, he doesn't seem to have done that. There were a couple of transfers later on, but they're into similar regiments.
What's surprising to me about these records is that, growing up with my grandfather, he was this big, strong guy who was, he would pick all of us up with one hand, and he was really athletic. So it's just so surprising to me to see these records, and it kind of, that depicts him as a very average soldier. So do you think that this kind of represents a lack of interest on his behalf, or a lack of sympathy for the war? Because it doesn't really match what I know about him.
On the balance of the evidence we have here, we've got him in a sort of third-rate division, with not much frontline service. He's not had an awful lot of promotion, so he's not sort of pushing to be promoted. He's not pleasing his superiors enough to be promoted. He's not someone who's showing any evidence, really, of being terribly enthusiastic.
Well, that's good to know.